maybe Team Shaw, have you got a question you want to ask?
Okay, so we were going to ask, how did you overcome your injuries, both mentally and physically, to get back to the top of your game?
Hey, I was just going to say about your back, because somebody said to me once that there's two kinds of cyclists: those that get bad backs. And I was hoping he was going to say those that don't, and he says those that are going to get bad backs. So there's obviously a bit of a link between cycling and rowing.
Yeah, no, unfortunately. Yeah, it's part and parcel of being an elite level athlete, I guess, is your body is put under incredible strain. And I was unlucky, and despite being about 6'3", I'm small for an international rower. So actually I was probably having to sort of push myself to the limit relatively more than some of the others. And my weak spot was my back. So I had a couple of fairly major back injuries that I had to get over. One when actually I was in my mid and early 20s, and the other one actually, it was just 1 year before the Sydney Olympics. So having gone through my career and built everything towards this ultimate dream and this ultimate goal, I had to come out of the team for about 9 months, and I had an operation, and then there's the recovery from the operation, and then there's the sort of different stages of recovery where you get back to doing normal things, you get back to being active, to hopefully get back into a boat, get yourself fit and back to the level of performance that you'd been previously. And I'll admit it's the toughest time of any athlete's career, because actually competition you can pitch yourself against. I actually enjoyed the races. I enjoyed the nerves and the that sort of competitive aspect. But when it was my body letting me down, that was a difficult thing to manage, because actually I just couldn't rely on doing the things I would normally rely on. But the way for me that I got over it was having small steps. So partly described it, I guess, up until now, but I knew I had to have an operation, so I had to have the operation, and then it was okay, well, what's the next step? The next step actually is getting out of bed. I mean, anyone can get out of bed. Wow. Okay, it took me sort of 4 weeks to get out of bed, but okay, 4 weeks later, I was able to get out of bed. And then, okay, the next step is, well, let's get walking again. And okay, so you then sort of challenge yourself to put one step in front of the other, and any normal person can put one step in front of the other. So why should I not be able to? And it was, I mean, it sounds silly, but it was just putting it into these little bite-sized chunks. And even towards the end of the recovery, where again, maybe I was back in a boat and I was competing and going to World Cups, there was still the drive and determination that I wanted to get back to being at least as good as I was before. And in a funny way, and to sort of wrap it up, I'll honestly say I came back a better and stronger athlete than I started off, because probably before the difficulties of the injuries, I probably took things for granted. That actually I was quite a natural athlete. I relied on feel and technique, and I mean, I trained hard, but actually there were probably things that I didn't realize that I was getting away with, that the injury told me that I had to make right. And the injury made me kind of change my mentality from, and I think before the injury I was, well, I wouldn't do something if it made me slower. And there was that kind of, I guess, philosophy of life. But actually the injury then made me change that to, I'll only do things that make me quicker. And it might not sound like a massive change, but that was the way, I guess, I spent the last sort of 12 months in the build up to the Sydney Olympics, with very much thinking about, well, actually, if I do this, will it make me faster? And that wasn't always training harder and harder. It might actually be taking some time away and refreshing and recovering mentally, or looking at a different way of doing things. But to me, that was probably the edge. And when it comes down to it, and you go to that level of competition, the margins are so tiny, you actually don't know what made the difference. And a silly story I was actually recounting the other day to someone was, when the rest of my team had gone down to Seville, it was a February, it must have been, sort of February time. They've all gone down to Seville because the weather's nicer. There's some beautiful water down there. they've gone down there to train together, and I asked to go because at this point I couldn't row, but I could get on a bike. And the team managers wouldn't let me go. They said, oh, actually, unless you can row, you can't go. And so I actually went up to a place actually just north of Birmingham called Lilleshall, where there's an injury recovery centre. And it was me and a bunch of injured professional football players. And anyway, I go off and do my bit. They're all in the gym, and I get on my bike and I cycle out on this February afternoon, and I get lost. And I've intended to do about an hour and a half on the bike, and I actually get about an hour out, and I'm trying to turn around and get lost, and it starts to snow. And I ultimately come back to this gym 3 hours later, and I'm at the point of tears. I mean, I must have been, at this point, I was as low as I'm ever going to get. And I just had, why me? Why is everything against me at this point? And I got back into the gym, and the other 13 guys in the gym, all football players who'd been tucked away in the warm, just laughed at me and said, well, why on earth are you doing it? And actually at that point, I immediately knew the answer as well, because I have to. And their point was, well, if no one sees you doing it, why do you do it? And my point was, well, actually, I know I have to do it. And I now look back at that one particular, it's a silly instance because it's only one training session in the grand scheme of things, but we won by 0.4 of a second. And I wonder actually if it was that session or the mentality that helped kind of induce, whether that was the difference when it ultimately came down to it. And I'll never know the honest answer. I'm just glad that I did it.